Hey y'all, I'm Ashley, an indie Christian fantasy writer, and today we are going over the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which is one of my favorite books from the Chronicles of Narnia series. This is the third video of my mini-series going over all the books from the Chronicles of Narnia in publication order, so be sure to hit subscribe and hit that like button to not miss the rest of the series. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader begins with Lucy and Edmund staying with their cousin Eustace, who C.S. Lewis introduces as a boy called Eustace Clarence Scrubb, and he almost deserved it. Do that what you will, but the youngest Pevensies are with the Scrubbs because Peter's studying with Professor Kirk from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Susan's with their parents in America, and there either wasn't enough room for or enough money to take Lucy and Edmund, so they wound up with their Uncle Harold, Aunt Alberta, and Cousin Eustace. Lucy and Edmund don't really get along with Eustace, they're not exactly thrilled about staying there. The siblings are in Lucy's room studying a painting of a ship that they find to be a very Narnian-looking ship, when Eustace decides to drop in and tease them about their opinion of the painting and of their magical country. He can't do it for long because the painting becomes a portal to Narnia, and the three of them are dropped into the Narnian Sea, next to the Dawn Treader. After being rescued by some of the sailors from the Dawn Treader, the Pevensies find that it's been 3 years since they've been in Narnia, and Caspian, from Prince Caspian, is now king. Because of the peace in Narnia, he is now able to fulfill his promise to find the 7 missing lords of Narnia. They shed away under his Uncle Miraz and were never heard from again. Reepicheep, the talking mouse, also of Prince Caspian fame, is on board, and he hopes that they might discover Aslan's country while on their journey. Eustace is convinced this is some elaborate prank staged by his cousins and demands some of Plumtree's vitamin-sized nerve food, made with distilled water, and that he be dropped off in the nearest landing. They finally manage to persuade him to be satisfied that they are going towards the nearest land as quickly as possible. They soon come to the Lone Islands, a remote collection of islands that belong to Narnia. Lucy, Edmund, Eustace, Caspian, and Reepicheep decide to go walking on one of the islands since it's mostly empty, but they end up being captured by slavers who mean to take them to the market. Caspian gets sold to a nobleman who happens to come across them, and this nobleman ends up being one of the missing Narnian lords, Lord Byrne. Caspian and Byrne team up to rescue Lucy, Edmund, Eustace, and Reepicheep. Through their schemes, they end up throwing the current Governor Gumpus, abolish slavery in the Lone Islands, and rescue their friends. Caspian appoints Byrne as the new Duke of the Lone Islands, and they continue on their journey. They soon hit a huge storm and it damages the Dawn Treader, but they manage to find an island. This point of the story we get entirely from Eustace's journal entries. Unsurprisingly, he's not thrilled of any of this, and frankly is the spiteful little brat that he's been this entire time, though he thinks he's the only sane one on this adventure. It's definitely interesting to see things from his point of view, but it doesn't really make him look much better. One of his journal entries is this: "The first day in ages when I've been able to write. We've been driven before a hurricane for 13 days and nights. I know this because I kept careful count, though the others would say it's only 12. Pleasant to be embarked on a dangerous voyage when people can't even count right. I've had a ghastly time, up and down enormous waves, hour after hour, usually wet to the skin, and not even an attempt at giving us proper meals. Needless to say, there's no wireless or even a rocket, so no chance of signaling anyone for help. It all proves what I've been telling them, the madness of setting out in a rotten little tub like this." Well, despite Eustace's opinion of the journey, they all begin fixing the ship or restocking the food, except for the aforementioned Eustace, who decides to wander off because he doesn't want to work. Interestingly, Lewis makes note of his character development here since he writes, "Though he panted and mopped his forehead a good deal, he plugged away steadily." This showed, by the way, that his new life, little as he suspected it, had already done him some good. The old Eustace, Harold and Alberta's Eustace, would have given up the climb after about 10 minutes. Eustace finds a cave with a dying dragon inside. He watches the dragon die and eventually works up the nerve to go into the cave. To his surprise, he finds a treasure hoard, though he doesn't realize that's what it is at first, since Eustace had read only the wrong books. They had a lot to say about exports and imports and governments and drains, but they were weak on dragons. Eustace falls asleep on the treasure hoard after putting a bracelet on his wrist. Well, Eustace wakes up as a dragon, though at first he thinks he fell asleep between 2 dragons and doesn't realize it until he looks into the nearby lake. He's at first excited, thinking that he can get back at Caspian and Edmund, who he's basically hated this entire time. But then he realizes that he's a beast now. The bracelet is still on his wrist, but it's too small and won't come off. Eustace flies back to the ship and convinces them that he's Eustace and not just some random dragon. For the first time, he becomes helpful to them by pulling up trees to help them fix the boat, and by hunting for food. A few days later, Aslan appears to Eustace and makes him back into a human. Eustace still has the bracelet, and Caspian finally realizes that it used to belong to one of the missing lords, Lord Artesian. They decide that Artesian was either killed by or turned into the dragon that Eustace saw die before he became a dragon. After setting sail from this island, they're attacked by a sea serpent, and Eustace shows how much he's changed by attacking the beast. Though it doesn't really do much except break one of Caspian's swords, they praise his bravery after the fact. They next come upon an island with a pool that turns anything into solid gold. They find what they think is a golden statue at the bottom of it, but eventually realize that it's actually Lord Resthamar, who they think went for a swim in the water. After a bout of greed from Edmund and Caspian, they decide to call it Deathwater Island and sail away. The next island they come across is one of the funniest in my opinion. Here they find a bunch of invisible, one-legged dwarfs called Duffers, who persuade Lucy to say a spell that will turn them visible because their cruel ruler is a magician who made them ugly, so they made themselves invisible, but now they're tired of being invisible. Lucy goes upstairs in the magician's house where she discovers that he's actually a good ruler, shocker, and sees Aslan. They have a meal with the magician and soon depart. They find a cloud of darkness, where they find another missing Narnian lord, Lord Roop, who's almost scared out of his mind. He explains that it's an island where dreams come true, but not your nice daydreams, it's your weird, unsettling dreams or your straight-up nightmares. Ripetreat persuades them to enter anyway, and through Aslan's power, the island is destroyed. They next find an island with Aslan's table on it, which is a table that has a meal restocked daily by birds. They find the remaining 3 lords asleep at this table, but are unable to wake them. They soon meet Ramandu, a star now living as a human on the island, who tells them that the spell the lords sit under can only be broken by sailing to the eastern edge of the world and leaving behind a crew member. The Narnia world is flat, so this is why they can sail to the edge of it. Caspian also hits it off with Ramandu's daughter, but they soon leave to do what Ramandu said would waken the sleeping lords. Well, they keep sailing further east, and Ripetreat discovers that the ocean water is actually sweet. This excites him because of a rhyme sung over him as a baby mouse that says, "Where the waves grow sweet, doubt not Ripetreat, there is the utter east." They also find a sea full of lilies when Aslan appears to Caspian and tells them that Edmund, Lucy, Eustace, and Ripetreat must sail on alone. After a hard goodbye, the 4 of them leave on one of the boats. They row through the lilies and come to a wall of water, where Ripetreat farewells his friends before he takes the boat over the wall of water and comes to Aslan's country. Edmund, Lucy, and Eustace then come across a lamb who is actually Aslan. He tells them that it's time to go back home and that Edmund and Lucy won't be coming back to Narnia. But he comforts them by saying, "But in your world, I have another name. You must learn to know me by that name. This was the very reason you were brought into Narnia, so that by knowing me here for a little, you may know me better there." The book wraps up by saying that Caspian and his crew make it safely back into Narnia, and that Caspian married Amanda's daughter. It also talks about Eustace's transformation and ends with his mother's and everyone else's opinion on that transformation. Back in our own world, everyone soon started saying how Eustace had improved and how you never know him for the same boy. Everyone except Aunt Alberta, who said he'd become very commonplace and tiresome, and it must have been the influence of those Pevensey children. So what did you all think of the Voyage of the Dawn Treader? Have you read it before, or did I convince you to update your TBR list? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.